Welcome back. It's great to be with you again. We are continuing our course, Intro to Apologetics, and this is lesson 2, the historical Jesus. So, the outcome of this lesson is to equip you to understand and articulate why Jesus was a historical figure beyond the Bible. So, Jesus, he's a pretty big deal. We got to figure out who Jesus is, why he was here, if he was real, all that kind of stuff. These are questions that we have to answer because, like it or not, whether you believe that he's the Son of God or not, you have to reconcile the fact that Jesus kind of changed a lot of stuff and he's made some waves throughout history. So we have to look at the historical evidence for Jesus being a real person. And then, obviously, as you discover Christianity or look into it yourself and understand who Jesus is in your own life, you can answer the question on, is he God? But we're going to be looking at the historical claims and references to that Jesus was a real person that also help validate why we believe he is the Son of God. So there's a lot of historical evidence for Jesus. First of all, we have the Bible. And I know, the cynic, whatever. Oh, the Bible. You can't use the Bible to prove the Bible. You have to stop for a second. Understand that the Bible is a historical book. This isn't a fairy tale. Once upon a time in the land of Nod. No, that's not how it reads. The gospel accounts specifically read as they are historical narrative. That it is, Jesus went to this place, he was at this place, at this time, with these people. That's how the Gospels read. Now, if you want to question their validity or whatever else, we're going to talk about that in the next lesson. But you have to understand that the Bible is a historical textbook. This has validity. We can't just throw it out simply because we don't like other parts of it or we don't agree with all of it. We have to answer honestly and look honestly at the text of the New Testament, particularly the Gospels, and give that textual criticism. Give it what it deserves, which is historical documentation on the life of Jesus Christ. We have 4 of them. 4 documents on the life of Jesus Christ. So we can, compare those to each other, but we can't outright negate the Bible just because we don't like the Bible or because we don't agree with the Bible. But for the sake of this lesson, I'm going to give you more. So it's not just the Bible. I get it. The cynic or the skeptic or the person that says, no, hey, you can't use the Bible. Okay, well, all right, let's use some other things. So first of all, Tacitus. He was a Roman historian. And he wrote references of Christ and his execution under Pontius Pilate in Annals 1544. Like he literally wrote, a Roman historian. He is writing about Jesus and his crucifixion under Pontius Pilate. So there's a source that's non-biblical, a Roman historian. We have Josephus, a Jewish historian who mentions Jesus in Antiquities of the Jews. So here's a Jewish historian who writes references to Jesus. Now, again, they're not making the same claims that Jesus made or that the gospel writers are making, but they're setting the stage that early historians are validating. No, this Jesus guy, he was real, and there's a whole lot of stuff happening because he came here and he made some stuff happen and he stirred up the crowd. So those are 2 already that you need to look at. And finally, Pliny the Younger. He had documents of early Christian worship practices that helped to reference Jesus. So there's 3 people that you can look into right now that are non-biblical, extra-biblical sources that can confirm that Jesus was a real person. Now, again, this is not about whether Jesus was the Son of God or not. This is just providing the historical context and foundation to say, at the very least, Jesus existed. Jesus was real. And it is, I will say this confidently, it is in the minority view that Jesus was not a real person. So if you're going to go out and quote that, oh, well, there's scholars and experts that say that Jesus wasn't real, you are in the minority. You are. That is not the consensus of historians, both current and especially early historians, was that Jesus was a real person. So you can say that, but to your own detriment, that you don't have any idea what you're talking about. So, Jesus in the context of history, he was a first century Jew in Judea under Roman rule. So when we read the Gospels, we can actually validate the things that they're saying about the Romans, about their practice, about Judea. You can validate those things throughout other books of history, as well as traveling to the country. You can actually affirm that, okay, this is the time period that Jesus lived in, and here's the things that they wrote in the Gospels that they actually did in that time. Uh, that same point, aligning it with the historical record. So the census of Luke matches other historical records. So there's these things that line up with this is what happened in the Gospels, and this is what was happening in the Roman Empire at that time. So Jesus is in a place of history. Again, this is not a fairy tale. This isn't a made up land. This is a real place that actually exists on this earth. And newsflash, you can go there. You literally can go to Israel and see all these places. So it's not like it's a made up story. So, refuting some common skepticism are mythicist claims versus historical consensus. So, again, a lot of people like to paint Jesus in this mythical style, or this, oh, it's very, it's not real. It's metaphysical, or whatever, mythical. All these stories, Lord of the Rings or Star Wars. It's just a story. Jesus is just a story. That's not true. You can read Bart Ehrman's book, Did Jesus Exist? He's an atheist. He wrote this book kind of, again, confirming what we've already talked about, but Jesus was a real person. And then when you go into the crucifixion and the resurrection, that's a lot of times where historians will deviate, but the vast majority, if not all of them, say, yeah, Jesus was a real person. So the skeptic claim of, well, he was just a mythical person or a mythical teacher, or he was a spiritual advisor, or maybe just even thought, oh, he was just a thought or a spirit. That's not true. So there's also archaeological corroboration. As I was talking about, Israel's a real place. A lot of these places that are mentioned in the Bible, they're all here today, maybe by different names or different geography, but they're real places. So it's not like it's made up. It's not a Star Wars universe that we can't travel to. These are real places, and there's archaeological corroboration, like the Pilate stone, the Nazareth inscription. There's also the tablet of Megiddo and an amulet that was found in Frankfurt. I'm not going to dive into all these things, but these are just different archaeological discoveries that are proving the claims of Christianity, as well as the validity that Jesus was a historical person. And finally, there's scriptural integration. So this goes back to the point of Scripture affirming that Jesus was a real person, because not only did it prophesy Jesus coming, but it records his coming, and then there's more scriptural integration. So the first is the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. This was fulfilled in John 1:14 when it says, "And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen his glory, glory as of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth." Another thing is that Jesus lived a human life and experienced humanity fully. In Hebrews 4:15, it says, "For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who is in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin." So Jesus came to this earth. He lived a human life. He understands what you're going through. He understands your sin. He understands your pain. He understands your temptation, but he didn't ever sin himself. He understands our human existence, but he lived the perfect sinless life, the life that humanity was always meant to live. And so he understands and he empathizes with us because he lived a human life. So practical takeaways here: share historical evidence confidently. You can reference these things as historical fact. You can say, hey, this is a historical fact. These things have been proven. This is what Tacitus wrote. This is what Josephus wrote. Here's an archaeological discovery that affirms my position. So you don't always have to be on the defensive. You can be on the offensive of, hey, what do you think about this? This is a archaeological discovery. What do you think? And also, we can use external sources to engage skeptics thoughtfully. Again, we don't always have to appeal to the Bible if the people we're talking to don't view the Bible as authoritative. Let's talk about Tacitus. Let's talk about Josephus. Let's read the history of the early church fathers because they were obviously talking about Jesus. Let's review those parts of history if you want to discredit the Bible. But speaking about that, we're actually going to jump into our next lesson where we're going to be talking about the scriptures were corrupted.